I just want to make a short little video basically saying I really don't get. Like, I get going to school, but like, the school system is so bad. Like, did you know people, like, school can literally drive someone to die by their own hand? And guess what? I haven't really talked about this, but like, I am gonna talk about this. I'm not gonna mention like any school names or whatever, like my school or whatever. But I was suspended for the whole month of October by my like high school that I started this year with. And basically it was because of a panic attack. And like basically like I had a panic attack, and here's basically how the story went. I was like so like, you know when like you can't do schoolwork because there's like triggering things going on in your brain, and it's because of stuff that, I don't know, like happens on social media or happens at home or whatever. Nothing really specific. It's just everything that's going bad in your life just building up in your mind. Well, and so basically sometimes at random moments, like, you can't get your mind off of it. People say, school should get your mind off of it. It doesn't really. Not when, like, the teacher is teaching and, like, you're on your Chromebook waiting for instructions and stuff. Like, it's really hard to focus on other things when there's a lot going on in your head. So I broke down crying, and so I went out of the class. The teacher didn't even notice. It was a substitute, but they didn't even notice. And so I just went down, and I was like, I didn't know where I was going. And then I walked into someone who's from guidance, like a counselor there. She was a really good counselor. She wasn't even my counselor. I barely knew her. Like, that day was like probably the second time I met her, but like, so far so good from her. And basically, like, she led me to my personal counselor. We talked, and I was being like, I really want to go home because I can't do schoolwork because of all the things going on in my head. Called my mom, just kept talking. She said, no, I can't, I have work. And I said, what about my brother? And she said, if he wakes up, which he probably won't. And I was like, what about grandma? What about, like, anyone? That's how desperate I was. And she was like, she didn't really see it as, like, a serious problem. But I kept, like, practically begging. And so, yeah. And eventually I hung up, and then, like, I just shut down. Like, I was frozen, and I was, like, staring, like, in the like, my eyes were like drifting apart, and it's kind of like I was dissociating. And then the counselor like really had to go because she had like another person waiting, so she was trying to get me out of the office, but I, again, dissociating. And she knows that if she were to touch me, I would have like instant panic. So instead of touching me or anything, or like doing something rude like waving in front of my eyes, which is really doesn't help when you're dissociating. It can cause you panic. Because, like, imagine you're dreaming and then someone shook you awake in bed. Like, wouldn't you scream, or wouldn't you be like, what the fuck? Like, you would be shocked. And it wouldn't just be out of surprise. While you're dissociating, you're also anxious, you're also in fear. So if she were to wake me, who knows what could have happened. I could have had a panic attack on the spot. And so basically, yeah, I was crying. So I was, yeah. Wait. Oh my God. Okay. And so as I was shut down, I like came awake, and then I was just like crying, and I was just crying to the counselor, and I was being like, bro, I don't know what to do. And so then we went to the room known as Empower. And so, sorry, this isn't exactly what happened. I remember that I kind of just remembered things in a different time where I had a panic attack, so I'm just going to continue on with the story. But yeah, anyways. So then I was like in the Empower room talking to my Empower teacher, you know, like the little special ed class that you take on mindfulness, that class. And so I was talking to that teacher and to my counselor in the break room, in like the break room that you have, like that's quiet and is dark lighted and has fidgets and stuff for you. And basically I was talking, and then like I was thinking, how do I calm myself down? So then I like got out my phone and I was like being like, maybe I could fidget or like call someone, like a personal therapist or whatever. As I pulled it out, my Empower teacher, this is what triggered me further. She didn't yell, but she, you know when someone talks at you very sternly, at like you know how your mom like talks to you very sternly, and then like it's your mom, you're like okay with that, but it like kind of invokes a little bit of fear. Yeah. And then when a teacher does it, it's especially scary because you don't know them personally. So then she was talking to me sternly. She was like saying, put the phone away. We have a phone law. And well, she wasn't really bringing up the phone law. She was just being like, I'm talking to you. Put your phone away. And I was just like, why are you assuming? Like, I could have been pulling something out that's helpful. I could have even been communicating it, like on Google Notes or whatever. Like, I could have been using it for something in our conversation, but no, she just flat out and said, put the phone away. And then I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And so, yeah, that happened. And so I was like, and then because I have trauma with people yelling at me and stuff, I like stood up and then I was like walking to the exit of the room because I was like, I don't like how you're speaking to me. It kind of, I feel like if you're gonna yell at me or whatever, it's just gonna trigger me further. So, please leave me alone. And so then I walked away. I went to the bathroom that was next to the class that I was supposed to be in, where I eventually called one of my friends and I was like saying, hey, can you meet me here? I'm having a stressful time, and the counselors literally aren't helping. Like, they're literally being like, coping skill, or, color, or fidget, and I'm like, what? How is that gonna help me? Like, I get that they were trying, but, like, God. When you can't do schoolwork, and it's so bad, and then, like, they're like rushing, they were, like, rushing my panic, and being like, hey, do a coping skill so that you can get back to class. I was like, I don't want to do that, thank you. Like, bro, like, and then we tried, like, a break and everything, like, we tried a break and stuff, but, like, they were, like, limiting it, like, they were, like, 5 minutes, and I was like, oh my God, just leave me alone. So yeah, that's why I like left and went to a bathroom and called my friend. I was like, hey, I need someone to talk to because these people aren't listening. And then they were like, okay, I'll meet you. And then boom, we talked. And then I checked the time and I was like, oh, I think it's lunchtime. And they were like, yeah, it is lunchtime. And so I went to the lunch and then I started eating and talking to my friends and stuff. And then that was nice, but then my grade level principal came into the room at the end of lunch when I was like cleaning up and everything, and he said, hey, can you come to me with Empower? And I was like, sure. And so I went to Empower with him, and then basically he was like saying, where were you? And I was like saying, oh, I was just in the bathroom talking to a friend because the teachers and the counselors weren't really helping. And they said, well, you can't really do that. And I was like, bro, I'm either gonna be crying in class or talking to a friend. And they were like saying, well, you should have gone to class. And I was like, I would have had a panic attack and cried in class. And they were like, well, you should have gone to the counselor. I was like, I didn't feel heard by the counselor. I wanted to talk to my friend. And then they said, well, your friend had to be in class, and so did you have to be in class. So you talking and venting to your friend was just like taking you off class time. And I was like, do you hear yourself right now? The hell? Bro. they were literally invalidating my feelings and saying, you should have been in class. And I was like, bro, what? Okay, I'm sorry I wanted to vent out with my feelings, like, and I get how, like, you need to be in class, but, like, it was lunchtime for my friend. It was lunchtime for her, and we had, like, I had 30 minutes left, at least, of, like, you know, my class, or maybe 15. I had barely any time left in my class, so I don't know why they were being like, you missed 10 minutes of your class. I was like, bruh. And then they told me, you also went to the wrong lunch. And I was like, oh, cool. I just go back to my lunch. And they're like, yeah, now is your current lunchtime. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll just go to my correct lunch time and chill with my friends. And then, you know, go back to class for the rest of the day. My school level principal was like, no. You see, you went to the wrong lunch, which means and we didn't know where you were, which means you're gonna be in lunch detention. And I was like, so, out of curiosity, what does that entail? They literally said, you're gonna sit in a room and not talk and do schoolwork. And I was like, bro, you're telling me, who struggles with literally thinking about a lot of depressing crap nearly 24/7, to sit in a room where there's nothing playing in the background, no music, nothing to distract me, in pure silence, to work on schoolwork. I literally kept putting this into perspective with them. They dismissed it so fast. So then I was like rebelling and being like, no, I'm gonna go to my lunch. So then I went to my lunch, and then they like called another person for backup. I don't know. And so I was just sitting there at the lunch table with like one of my friends, and then like they kept like being like, bro, you need to go to lunch detention or we're gonna call your mom so that she can pick you up. And I'm like, bro, you're making a huge scene out of nothing, after how I've literally explained this so many times to you. I can't sit in a room alone with my thoughts that are literally destructive and depressing and crap. I have mental illnesses. I can't do that. I literally never sit in silence for more than like 5 minutes. So I was like, no, I want to talk to my friends so I can literally calm down and continue my day. Bro, one of them literally said, school is not a place where you make friends, where you socialize and all that. I'm like, and then they kept saying, and then as I was like saying, bro, what? And like, like repeating back what they're saying, you can't nitpick what we're saying, okay? That's just rude. And I was like, bro, I'm taking what you're saying in a serious note. If we were like in the meeting or talking like adults or whatever, like I'm pretty sure this is how it would go down. And then there's like saying, but you're a child, you aren't an adult. And I'm like, oh God. Oh my God, it keeps getting better. And so yeah. Eventually, you know when you go quiet and dark and you're just like, you know, quiet and dark. I was like, you know what, fine. I'll go to the room. I'll go to lunch detention. And so many things were going on in my mind. And as soon as we, like, entered the lunch detention room, like, something within me in the back of my mind said, you know, I just feel like screaming right now. And so when you're in that little mind gap of being like, oh, like when you're in that little mind, when you literally have no two craps left, like literally no craps left. This is literally what happened. I screamed. And not only that, I was like an angry toddler, like a giant angry toddler in like, I don't know, Claire's or whatever. I would stomp and just scream. I threw my backpack off my back. I don't know how far I threw that thing. And then I can't really say what happened after that, but eventually, like, I'm not gonna explain how, but they got me into a room. They didn't touch me. No, I was very anxious and self-reliant, like in a panic state. So I was just like, what's going on? And so then I was like, you know what? No, I'll behave or whatever the hell. And so yeah, I followed them into a room where I just kept screaming and screaming. I was literally screaming my words. I was so triggered. So triggered. And so basically, like, I was like saying, no, because they're just gonna use this whole entire crash out against me. They're literally gonna write this against me. They're gonna do so many things against me. Everyone sees me as an angry teenager. That's all they see me as. Nothing I say matters. Nothing I do matters. I have to obey, otherwise they're gonna send me home. And then I just kept going on and on and on and on. And then, like, my empowered teacher, and keep in mind, the fact that she triggered me, like the same day, like many hours before, that's important to what happens next. She walked in, me being triggered, remembers the moment she nearly yelled at me and was talking very sternly at me, goes into panic mode, yells at her to get out. She refuses. I keep yelling at her to get out. Eventually, I'm like holding everything in me. I was like, no, you have to remain self-controlled. So I didn't physically hit her, but I did shove a chair into her to get out of the classroom. And then, like, the teachers, and like, literally, it seemed like no one else was in the room. Like, I was just so pissed off. And then the people coming in just were like, may I please come in? And then they're like, and I was like, no. And then I was like, and then another person, which was the counselor that I ran into, who was really nice to me for the past few days, asked, may I please come in? I don't want to trigger you. I just want to help. And then I was like, you may come in. And then they just said, like, see, I see you, I hear you, I'm here for you. And then they saw how, like, I was basically slamming my hands on the table to make, like, I make hand gestures when I talk. So, like, they saw that I was, like, making hand gestures, like, very aggressively onto a table. So much so that my, like, hands and wrists were red and kind of bruising. So then they're like, can we get a nurse in here? And then, like, a nurse came in. Boom. She gave me my panic attack med, and she gave me ice for my wounds. And then basically we just sat in there, kept talking about the problem until I would calm down. And then they were like, okay, we're gonna call your mom. And I was like, oh my god. So basically I was in the exhaustion phase after a huge panic attack or crash out. I was just really exhausted and tired. Like, my eyes were burning already from all the crying and stuff. And so, yeah. And then my mom came in. They were being like, we don't know what we're gonna do. We don't know how we're gonna punish you, but for now you're gonna be suspended. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I was suspended for the whole month. And then they transferred schools. I wasn't officially expelled or anything, but yeah, they transferred schools with me. Ugh, the whole thing was so upsetting. And then there was a tiny meeting that we had. And I was basically, like, I had to be present there, and I was so pissed off that the day before, like, hours before, prior to this meeting, I was, like, so pissed that I really didn't want to talk to them. And then, basically, during that whole meeting, like, I wrote a letter, like, a whole letter about, like, being, like, I don't forgive you, I'm really mad at you, and stuff like that, like, and about how mad I was, about how they weren't really caring about my, like, school, my, like, education when they suspended me. They sent me no tutor, nothing. I literally had to do everything, like, online for a few weeks, and it was so frustrating because I literally didn't know how to do it. So I did, like, 2% of work for the whole month because I was so demotivated and I didn't have a tutor or anything. So, yeah. And so, after the meeting, they still had me suspended because I wasn't sincere and apologetic enough. Bro, what? Like, they were so cruel. And it wasn't even the school board that decided that. It was the frickin' little school president or whatever. I don't know. not the principal. Like, they were like in charge of the school, but they weren't the school board. I don't know how to explain it. But anyways, bye-bye. I want to continue watching Tommy in it, and I need to use the restroom really badly, so I'm just gonna end this video. Bye!